Very good morning, as well as very good evening to all of you. So this is the 11th sub-webinar series of the FEFMC. Let me introduce actually the speaker today, Dr. Joanne M. Folin. So he's a distinguished professor and former dean of the College of Forestry and Natural Resources at the University of the Philippines, Los Banos. So since 2011, he has held actually the prestigious rank of UP Scientist 3, highlighting his exceptional scholarly contribution and international scientific reputation. So, as the founding director of the UPLB, Interdisciplinary Studies for Integrated Natural Resources and Environmental Management, so Dr. Fulin is widely recognized as the Philippines' foremost expert in integrated natural resource governance. So, he has served as the visiting professor at the University of Tokyo on 4 occasions and as a visiting scholar at Waseda University in Japan. So, additionally, he contributed as an invited expert for the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research. So, Dr. Pulin is an academician of the National Academy of Sciences and Technology in the Philippines and plays a vital role on the multi stakeholder advisory council of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. So, recently, he was appointed by the President of the Philippines to the Climate Change Commission, People's Survival Fund Board, where he represents the academia and the scientific community. So his numerous accolades include national and international awards, most notably his contribution to the 2007 Nobel Peace Prize, shared by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and former US Vice President Al Gore. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to introduce our esteemed speaker today, Dr. Julian M. Poulin, who will present on the topic, The Philippines in the Eye of the Storm, Implication for Forestry Education and Research. So, it is the personal voice of Mr. Dr. Julian M. Folin. So, Dr. Julian.
Thank you very much, Professor Puspakumara, for that generous introduction. So, good morning, everyone, and good evening for those who are located in different parts of the world. Let me share my screen. I hope you see it now.
Yes, very, very good quality.
Okay, so uh, the topic that I have chosen, in a way, was triggered by a recent challenge that the Philippines faces over the last several, just a month ago. And I believe that it has implications to forestry education and research, not only in the Philippines, but also in other parts of the world where we face similar situation. So I'll follow this outline in my presentation. I'll start briefly with an introduction. I go swiftly with the impacts of typhoons and disasters and their implications to forestry education and research. I'll towards the end, I'll just sum up and provide some general strategies for possible actions in this area, and then conclude with also a note on the call for action. As I was mentioning earlier, one of the main triggers of this particular presentation this morning is the parade of typhoons that uh, essentially was recorded probably first in the history of the Philippines, not very long time ago, just more than a month, less than a month from now, where you have a series of typhoons in queue, one coming after the other uh, in the Pacific Ocean that hits the Philippine archipelago, and that brings strong winds, heavy rains. It caused flooding, landslide, as well as storm surges, and that caused significant distractions in terms of both of the lives and properties, infrastructure, livelihoods, and of course, natural resources, including forestry in particular, that uh, uh, reached to significant losses, millions of pesos in equivalent losses as a result of these devastating tropical storms or cyclones. No, and there is already an increasing trend in the annual cost of this damage associated, particularly based on available records from 1984 to 2018. And at the same time, there's a significant increase in the tropical cyclone induced rainfall that has been observed, increasing from 16.9% to 19.3% per decade. Similarly, models project increases in the intensity and frequency of typhoons, uh, especially so if the global warming of the world will reach to 2 degrees centigrade. There is also the likely increase in the proportion of Category 4 and Category 5 tropical cyclones or typhoons. Uh, and 4 and 5 in the context of the Philippines is now called super typhoons. And evidently, the Philippines, just like many other probably tropical nations, face increasing and compounded risks from typhoons and, of course, other forms of climate related or climate, I would say, climate induced disasters. So let's look at the broader context. For the last 16th year in a row, the Philippines ranked first among the countries most at risk to natural disasters brought about by climate change and other forms of hazards. And that is according to the World Risk Report 2024. Uh, Existing information also says that between 2012 and 2024, approximately 106 million individuals were directly affected by tropical cyclones alone, and that results to roughly 10,000 fatalities. During the same period, the country also incurred losses and damages amounting to 482.39 billion pesos. And if the current business as usual pathways of development will continue, this could be exacerbated, these impacts will be exacerbated, and has been based on the recent World Bank study, can impact the Philippine economy by reducing 13% of its gross domestic product by 2040. Again, what makes Philippines vulnerable is its exposure. Most of the strong tropical cyclones are being formed at the western part of the Pacific Ocean, and it enters the Philippine area of responsibilities. Uh, and Historically, there was an average of 20 tropical cyclones uh, per year, with 8 or 9 making a landfall in the country. And as you can see in this illustration on your left, from 1951 to 2022, these are the path of the tropical cyclones that enter the Philippine area of responsibility. And it has always almost erased the whole map of the country. And distinguished one distinction that can be observed as well is that even the pathway of typhoons is shifting. Areas in the southern Philippines, which used to be typhoon free, also is now occasionally being hard hit by these typhoons. So here are some of the images, photos of the recent series of typhoons that hit the country. This year was really phenomenal in the sense that in less than 2 months, you have six typhoons in a row, and a number of them are classified as super typhoons. And this brings significant devastations in terms of lives, in terms of properties, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of forest, and the livelihoods of the local communities who are depending on them for survival. We are seeing, however, that the Philippines is not a unique case, and hence the global implication of this particular talk. In many parts of the world, tropical cyclones have been occurring since 19 and the record from 1945 to 2006 shows the different path at the left, and we can also see in use the more prominent ones, for instance, the typhoon that lashes Guam with devastating winds and rain, also in Japan, as well as Indonesia, and in many parts of the world as well. So, for the remaining portion of my talk, with that as a background, I now aim to explore the impacts of disasters, specifically the typhoon-induced, or at a broader context, climate-induced disasters and their impacts on forests, communities, and ecosystems. I intend also to discuss the implications of this to forestry education and research, not only in the Philippines, but hopefully also with some global implications, uh, but specifically on the Asia Pacific region, and also advocate for an adaptive inter or even transdisciplinary approaches to enhance resilience. So, let me start with the impacts of typhoons, but providing first a bit of a context in the case of the Philippines. About 80% of the Philippines' original forest cover has been lost because of human activities, and much of the forests of that as around 10 million hectares were lost between the years 1935 to 1988. In the Philippines, we call it particularly the post-World War II until early 1980s as the logging boom, the years where we export logs in many countries, in post-World War II, particularly in Japan. In 1958 alone, one-third of the world export of logs found in the international market, and I again emphasize one-third of the world export of logs found in the international market came from the Philippines alone. And of course, deforestation is closely linked with various issues, including loss of biodiversity, reduced water supply in the watersheds, higher risks of disaster, including flooding and landslides, and porous ecosystems in the Philippines are also severely altered by humans, that their ability to provide life supporting services has been significantly reduced. But again, if you add this in the context of a natural stressor such as typhoon and so on, as we are saying in IPCC, the climate change is a threat multiplier. So it exacerbates what existing problem could be there already. And this is the case in the Philippines. So climate change will likely worsen the already degraded state of the forest in the country. That includes forest loss and biodiversity loss. Forest and biodiversity, of course, as we all know, are both vulnerable to the changing climate, including high temperatures, long dry periods, as well as those that are caused in terms of actual destruction. Trees are uprooted, just like in the photo, as far as tropical cyclones are concerned. Warming temperatures and rainfall changes can push plants and wildlife out of its prepared habitat ranges. It can also alter species composition as well as shift forest ranges upward. And earlier modeling that we have done in some species in the country say that we will be losing much of our probably dry forests, and but we will also give gaining some those who are which are located in wetter areas when temperature increases. No? But by and large, as in the rest of the world, uh, the impact of the changing climate is negative in the Philippine forests. So changing temperature and seasons could also delay or advance the flowering and fruiting of some trees and exacerbate outbreaks of pests and diseases. So similarly, when we talk about excessive rains, this could enhance surface soil erosion and also hasten soil fertility loss, as well as induce landslide in steep areas such as this one, as you can see in the photo, with thick soils and fractured rock layers. On the other hand, drier conditions during droughts could trigger forest fires, defoliation, and growth loss. And again, this has been evident in many parts of the world, like particularly in Indonesia, in Australia, in US, and in many other parts of the world. So climate change and deforestation combined can disrupt forest regulation functions such as water regulation, air quality, carbon dioxide sequestration, that leads to environmental problems like increased water scarcity in some regions, pollution, as well as loss of carbon sinks. On the social dimension, we also anticipate displacement of vulnerable populations who are depending on the forest for their livelihood and even for their cultural values. So, typhoon-related disasters force upland communities at times to relocate, uh, if not migrate temporarily, losing access to their primary resources as well as homes. Also increasing vulnerability to poverty and long-term socioeconomic challenges because, again, as the natural capital are destroyed, it takes quite a while to restore them back, uh, and hence these include also impact on the loss of income for forest-dependent communities. So destruction of forest resources, particularly timber as well as non-timber forest products, wildlife, uh, have direct impacts on the livelihoods of many forest-dependent communities, both in the case of the Philippines, migrants, and indigenous communities. Agricultural activities in upland areas or in forested areas like shifting cultivation or even agroforestry, are also disrupted by typhoons as well as erratic weather patterns. So, this in general, therefore, challenges the resilience, not both of the forest and the forest communities. So, the reduced capacity to recover due to limited resources, as characterized by what we call as low adaptive capacity of many poor communities, essentially a challenge, even in instances where historically resilience has been demonstrated. No? If we are hard hit, for instance, by a super typhoon, then even communities which were before have demonstrated by virtue of their local traditional knowledge and practices were found to be resilient, can be challenged because of the destruction of their natural capital. So dependence on damaged ecosystems can therefore exacerbate the poverty cycles in the long run. And again, as I was saying, climate change is a threat multiplier. So if it hits, especially the more vulnerable sector of society, particularly those who are depending on the forest for their livelihoods and survival, then that has a long-lasting negative impacts to them. So, of course, globally, uh, climate change have impacts both at the global and local level. As we all know, forests act as carbon source or sink, while deforestation is a major contributor for greenhouse gas emissions. And these have impacts at the global climate. Forest also impacts, in addition to the role that it performs globally on local climate by influencing temperature, precipitations, winds, as well as soil moisture. And we have studies in Southeast Asia in particular that shows that deforestation of tropical forests result in lower rainfall, higher surface albedo, lower canopy evaporation, as well as higher ground evaporation. It also affects monsoon circulation. So again, as I already mentioned, impacts of both human activities and climate change on forests could hamper the country's effort towards sustainable development and could in fact exacerbate poverty, food security or food insecurity, and therefore making adaptation very challenging. So, in the remaining part, let me just quickly go through some of the implications of this to forestry education and research. That, of course, the first one being revisiting forestry curriculum or curricula to incorporate climate resilience and disaster risk reduction in the curriculum. So there are two pathways for this. One, of course, is you offer a degree program, let's say tropical forest and climate change. The other one is to incorporate climate resilience and disaster risk reduction on existing programs. May they be at the BS level or at the graduate level. And so, in terms, if we are to incorporate it, these are some of the courses that can be included. Courses focusing on climate smart forestry practices, highlighting ecosystem-based adaptation strategies such as mangrove restoration and watershed management, uh, educating students in terms of the use of certain valuable tools like GIS and remote sensing to monitor climate impacts on forests, educate students on disaster risk reduction frameworks. So that means incorporating courses related to this, like community-based disaster preparedness in forested areas. There is also a need for continuing education for future professionals, foster skills in policy development among forestry students, but including forestry professionals, to be able to integrate forestry with national climate action plans, encourage practical training on post-disaster forest recovery and reforestation techniques, strengthening collaboration with communities to address local climate change challenges, and promoting research and innovative solutions such as carbon sequestration projects and biodiversity conservation in a changing climates by encouraging students to probably address these even in their students' studies or thesis. So we just surfed this from the net, and this is, of course, not in the context of the Philippines, but just an illustrative example that integrating climate smart forestry can happen not only in tropical countries but in other countries as well, and the integration can come depending on the context. In the Philippines, natural forests are no longer being harvested or allowed to be harvested. We are only harvesting plantation species. But in this particular example, they highlight an online training course on climate smart forestry by focusing on timber harvesting in a changing climate. So an example in part one, for instance, this is how they have approached the course, investigate the scientific climate data and how it affect our region, recognize the implications of our changing climate on timber harvesting operations. So you started with the context and then the impact of the changing climates on timber harvesting, review and understand the results of MA 2020 on timber harvester survey, and become familiar with climate related challenges facing our region. So this is the context in part one, and part two, in a way, drill deeper by discussing familiar and innovative techniques to adapt the changing climate, understand the concept and importance of identifying safe wood or risky wood, explore best management practices and the role of adapting to changing climate, and also recommend resources for further learning opportunities. So this is just an example of an online course that tries to incorporate or contextualize timber harvesting in the context of changing climate. Now, very briefly, in the interest of time, let's move on the implication to research and development. So, uh, expanding research and development agenda beyond what is currently being done now would be a more appropriate response to the changing climate. So, examples will be species trials on various climatic regions. It could be within countries or across countries in terms of cross-country comparative analysis. So wind and fire resistant, testing wind and fire resistant varieties in terms of species trials, quick recovery, those species that would have quick recovery from climate disturbances, either fire or typhoon, And in fact, I think in my own college, the Makiling Center for Mountain Ecosystems have initial work on this area in terms of looking at how quick certain species can recover from a climate disturbance, in particular, let's say from a typhoon. Of course, we have the carbon sequestration potentials of different species. So in the Philippines, people are now appreciating the value of native or indigenous species, and it will also be good to assess the carbon sequestration potentials of these native species. So, expanding research and development agenda can also focus not only on mitigation but also some adaptation strategies to reduce negative impacts. So, example with the wind-resistant species, reforestation strategies. Again, in the Philippines, there was an effort recently, probably 5 years back, about climate proofing forestry master plan. So we have a forestry master plan that was earlier produced, and then they, in a way, rewrote that to make sure that it is responsive uh, to the changing climate, and therefore that would require or that required inputs from research and development work. No? Sustaining ecosystem services amidst disasters can would also be an interesting area to explore. And again, there are some initiatives in the country in terms of establishing long-term ecological monitoring and even evaluation, and uh, essentially long-term ecological monitoring plots established in different places would be able to detect the different changes brought about by the changing climate. And so again, probably not only within a specific country, but across country, this can probably be established so that you have longitudinal or historical data where which can be used as basis for science-based decision making. So there are also opportunities for addressing global challenges in terms of the role of in the context of climate change and forests. So one of that, which the Asia Pacific Forestry Education Network mechanism can pursue is, and which I think continue to pursue, is producing more knowledge, at the same time exchanging knowledge and experience between nations and collaborative research to tackle shared vulnerabilities, for instance, among areas which are within the tropical typhoon belt, or areas which is where forest fires is very much evident. Uh, and so there are a number of so many opportunities that can be harnessed or tapped in order to respond in terms of research, expanding the research and development agenda so that they can respond both locally but also addressing some of the global changes, global challenges associated with the changing climate. So, Uh, in terms of actual action, we are promoting inter or even transdisciplinary approaches. Both in education and research, the need to integrate natural sciences, social sciences, and policy studies becomes of paramount importance. The need for building partnerships among different stakeholders, particularly the academe, the governments, as well as the local communities. Again, so that uh, particular interventions will not only be policy relevant but also would address existing vulnerabilities of local communities. The need to enhance this partnership in not only in research and development but even in education, coming up with certain learning sites and so on would be important. Of course, as I've already mentioned, advancing collaborative efforts. So we have regional and international collaborations for research and education. And these are some of the existing platform that uh, where uh, forestry can participate on. For the ASEAN, we have the ASEAN for the Asia Pacific region, and then you have the UN Red, for instance. Of course, you have the IPCC initiatives, of which part of their outreach now is not only the assessment report per se, but they have also started to offer scholarships so that uh, younger people, so that there will be continuity in terms of expertise on climate change and so on. And of course, our very own network, it will be worth thinking along the current pressing challenges brought about by climate change, how APFECM can respond better, both in terms of education and collaborative research. And we don't have to start from scratch, but at the same time, we need to scale up existing innovations. We need to document case studies of successful interventions, particularly on vulnerable nations, and with the potential, with the end view of learning from those and hopefully scaling up those, and then disseminating as well the best practices for wider adaptation. I'll just show this. These are some of the potential platforms that some of us can probably engage in, so that uh, we can address the challenge of climate change in the context of the forestry sector. I now conclude with the call of action. So let me recap my key points. Climate-induced disasters pose significant challenges to forest communities as well as the forest ecosystems. Forests also impact global climate by being a significant carbon sink, and but at the same time as a carbon source in the case of deforestation. And the third item is that the forestry sector must adapt through education, research and development, as well as collaboration, so that it can respond better to the changing needs of the time. So, a call for action would be, we need to advocate for proactive measures in education and research, and we need to stress the importance of global collaboration or even regional collaboration to build resilience in forestry. So, To start this, uh, I'll end with a vision for the future by saying that a responsive forestry sector should contribute to sustainable development and global resilience. And I think AP or our network, which is APFECM, uh, has both a challenge and responsibility to drive or to be a major contributor in pursuing this more sustainable path to development and global resilience, starting it on our countries and then to the Asia Pacific region in general. So, with this, I'll end my presentation and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak in this forum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much actually for the very eye-opening as well as very timely. And the world is facing a very high flooding in Sri Lanka. We have flooding, and though that we don't have typhoon, and entire world is facing actually a threat. Right. I think without wasting time, let's open up actually this discussion for the this talk for the discussion. Is there any questions? Anything that you want to direct it to John Pauling?
Can I have
Yes,
one question?
yes, please, gang.
It's an excellent talk, John. I learned a lot. So you mentioned about the forest was lost about 80% in the last century, and now is Philippines making a lot of effort to restore the forest. Is it possible to restore the forest with the to go the similar like forest type or ecosystem before, or it's just like a new state of the forest ecosystem?
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Guang Yu, for that question. Yes, essentially, we have lost much of our natural forests. But you are right. In fact, we probably, uh, I think more than a decade ago, we came up with a study entitled One Century of Forest Rehabilitation in the Philippines.
Mhm,
So we have reached more than a century of effort to rehabilitate. So,
mhm,
on the one hand, we have massive destruction, but on the other hand, we have also historical record of efforts to restore what has been destroyed. No?
mhm,
Incidentally, I think the negative side, and this is my own view, is that much of the natural forest has been gone. And therefore, it's very hard to replenish that. Uh, and the situation have changed already. And
mhm,
so probably what can be done is to preserve what is there.
mhm,
But in terms of rehabilitation effort, then a much may be coming from because if you secured the protected areas now, where
mhm,
many of the natural forests are located, then you have now to your only options for rehabilitation now comes in the plantation forests. But at the same time, I think, and this changed the equation because, of course, but at the same time, the challenge also is uh, we have been we have lost the opportunity, the economic opportunity from our forests. Before, forests used to be a top dollar earner, but now we are importing around one third of our wood requirements, and so we spend billions of dollars in import, no? And so your in terms of strategy, you have now a combination in terms of making the forests more economically viable, but at the same time, making it also to ensure that it promotes the environmental protection. Uh, so the different ecosystem services, ranging from the production to regulating to cultural and so on, you need a balancing act as far as the current situation is concerned. No, so probably in terms of we may no longer get a similar quality and also uh, similar quality of forest as we used to have, but at the same time we make we need also to balance by satisfying the multiple requirements demanded of our forest resources. And we are lacking currently at the economic and livelihood aspects, which I believe should be strengthened along, of course, parallel with the protection and management of the existing forest resources. If we are to look at the recent data from 2015 to the current situation, there are indications of positive change because probably historically for the first time our forest cover increased by more than 200,000 hectares from 2015 to 2020. But of course, that could still be very insignificant, but at least it has addressed the downward trend that characterize our situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. John?
John,
Okay, is there any other questions? Yeah, please.
yeah, I was interested in one of the things that you said about the strategies, and that was to encourage a speedy recovery following disturbance. And I was just wondering about that because if you think about the trees that might come back fastest, you know, species that would be essentially pioneer species coming into gaps, would they not be fairly susceptible to future typhoons because they're fast growing, they're generally fairly weak trees with very light wood? I'm wondering if there's a trade-off between the rapidity of recovery and the resilience of the forest that ensues from that.
Thank you so much, John, for the question. Yes, this is a less explored area in research yet. So I'm sorry I don't have a concrete answer on this, but I believe that this will really be a very interesting area to look at. I know that some of my colleagues have uh, done some initial measurements or assessments after a series of typhoons and so on. But I think it's only on a very localized scale. Looking at the case of Mount Makiling, I have not had an updated data on that, but they look at it after disturbance, what happened and what are, as you have exactly mentioned, what are the trade-offs involved and so on. So this will certainly be a very, very interesting area of research. Yeah.
So my colleague here has another question.
Yeah, I'm Paolo Cherubini. I'm from Switzerland, and
Okay.
I'm a tree scientist. I study dendrochronology. Do you
Okay.
have do you have any dendrochronological studies in the area to reconstruct past climate and also to assess how good the different species may allocate and store carbon, as you were speaking also about, obviously, carbon storing. Do you have any information about the different species, and do you apply such information in your afforestation plans?
Very good question. Probably few years back, there has been some discussion on this issue. No? But unfortunately, as far as I know, we have not progressed much on this. There is keen interest of a number of people to pursue this type of work. If I remember it right, a former professor in my college have started a discussion, but he has now retired. So this issue would be another another interesting issue to pursue in research. And probably again, as I was saying, our network would be probably in a best position to do some collaborative research along this line, uh, picking a few countries and do some sort of comparative analysis on this issue. Thank you.
John,
Yes, yes.
is there any other question from the John Inns teams? Is there anything? No? Okay. So we have another few minutes, actually.
Mhm.
If there are any questions that you want to raise, and I think it's quite interesting presentation with a lot of information about the impact of typhoon on forest and its recovery process. We all know that actually we have a lot of things to explore, especially under the tropical belt, and how all these things, probably a kind of a countrywide collaborative work, may reveal that actually impact of a different environment and climate. And also some of the species are common in Asian continent, but some of the species are different and there are certain differences. Okay, is there any burning questions to our speaker, John? Okay, if not, actually, then I will hand over this to Susie, because I think this may be the last of our webinar, if I understand correctly, Susie. So thank you very much for requesting me to host our speaker, John Folin. Thank you, John, for giving a very so lot of with the speech with the very much of information. I think we understand that the good work that you are continuing, right? So please continuing the good work, and we will see you very soon, actually, in somewhere under this our APFECM network process. Susie, thank you for inviting me to host, and it is the floor is to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Pushpa, for hosting this webinar, and thank our speakers. So we will have a webinar next month again. It will be, I think, 11th of December. So I will send out the poster to everybody. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you, and bye then. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.